And joining us now is Congressman Reid Ribble. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Last week, the U.S. Supreme Court, as you well know, upheld Obamacare, and that is a plan that the person you defeated, Steve Kagan, was squarely behind. Is this issue over with? Where does it go from here? Just a few days ago, I had Mark Newman sitting in that very chair, and he said, in fact, this is not over. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I think that I think it's not even as important as what I stand or where I stand as is where the American people stand. And I'm hearing from constituents, and obviously I'm hearing from both sides, but overwhelmingly the constituents here in Northeast Wisconsin are concerned about the bill. They don't feel that costs are going down. They don't believe costs will go down. And so whether it stays in place, whether it gets repealed, there's going to have to be reforms to the Affordable Care Act. It's not working.
What's the biggest fear? Is it the costs, or is it the fear that I can't go see the doctor I want?
No, it depends on who you are. Yeah. If you're a business person, they're fearful of what the future cost is, so they're telling me, we're not hiring until we find out what those costs are going to be. If you're a senior citizen, they're fearful about the Independent Payment Advisory Board and whether or not their Medicare bills are going to be paid. You know, if you're uninsured, you're fearful that you're going to be able to be insured. And so they're obviously saying, well, this is a really good thing. If you're uninsured but want to be uninsured, they're fearful of the tax. And so it just depends on who you are. Virtually every single American has a different opinion on it.
So I'm sure you were hoping the bill was going to get thrown out and you could start all over again.
Well, I was.
If you could, what would it look like?
Well, I think there's some key reforms that have to happen. One is, I believe that the market is capable of correcting it if the market is allowed to work, and the market hasn't been allowed to work in healthcare for a long time. And so a couple things. One is true tort reform or medical liability reform that would change physician behavior. We can't just do legal reform if it doesn't affect physician behavior. If they still don't trust it and they do defensive medicine, you've not accomplished anything, have you? And so real reform there. Anything that would move the patient closer to the physician, to the provider. Right now there's a series of middlemen in between, and now the government's had a third one. We have the employer often picking the health plan, and then we have the insurance company telling where they go. And there's layers between the patient and the provider. What we want to do is slim that out and reduce the number of layers. And I think if you do that and have patients closer to the actual purchasing decision, knowing what those costs will be ahead of time, you'll see more aggressive shopping. And then, obviously, positioning healthcare providers, clinics, hospitals in a position where they're better able to work with each other so that we don't have a lot of duplication of services, particularly in rural America, which is Wisconsin, Northeast Wisconsin, so that shared expenses and resources can happen.
Let me ask you about Operation Fast and Furious, with Eric Holder at the center of it. You've been at the center of all of this. For our viewers who may not be exactly familiar with Operation Fast and Furious, the Justice Department funneled 2,000 guns to Mexico in hopes of being able to funnel those guns to Mexican drug cartels. Instead, 2 of the weapons wound up at the scene of the murder of a U.S. border agent.
Correct.
U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder has been withholding documentation that Congress wants to get his hands on. What do you think is in the documentation? What is it that you're looking for?
Well, what we're trying to do is get an answer for the Terry family. We have a border agent who's dead, whose parents are grieving, and there are over 200 families in Mexico that have lost loved ones as a result of Fast and Furious. And we're trying to get the information. And I would ask you, if the IRS said to you, we want you to pay your taxes, you couldn't say to them, well, I'll give you 10% of it. And this is really what's going on. We're getting only a piece of the information. But the contempt vote that took place last week focused on a single document. The Attorney General gave a letter to the Congress that was factually untrue. It was not true. And it all focused on what happened on February of 2011. We want to get underneath how that happened. How did the Congress of the United States, in a subpoenaed and sworn testimony by the Attorney General's office, get information that was not true? And that's where the contempt is. It isn't so much about Fast and Furious and gun running. It's what people want to make it out to be. And they'll say, well, you know, this was going on under Bush, and so what's the big deal? It's not about that. It's about the Attorney General of the United States providing information to the Congress of the United States that was not true.
So with this contempt of Congress vote, of course, the Justice Department turned around immediately and said, we are not going to prosecute him. And they cited, going back all the way to the Reagan administration, that when executive privilege was claimed, that the Justice Department laid off. But you say this case is different.
It's completely different because it wasn't the White House that provided the documents. It was the Department of Justice that provided the documents. And now the White House is trying to create a smokescreen and protect this. And so now the American people are asking, well, what is the White House trying to hide? When will the Terry family get their answer? And they deserve an answer.
You are up for re-election, and it's a 2-year process. It seems as though as soon as you get elected, a member of Congress has to turn right around and begin campaigning once again. You have introduced legislation concerning term limits. What is it that you would like to see?
Yeah, so I've actually introduced 2 different term limits bills. The first one I introduced would take and change the term of a member of Congress to 4 years. Right now it's 2. So in reality, your member of Congress works about 50% of the time doing congressional work, about 50% of the time getting reelected. That's just the reality. I'm watching it happen in real time. And if we change that term to 4 years, you would have 75% of the time where they're working for their actual official position. If you place those elections between the presidential elections, like my bill proposed, every 2 years, the American people could still change course. They could send a message to government either through the legislative branch or the executive branch by changing it there. So there would be no reduction of say that the American people have. But we'd increase the efficiency of the Congress a lot. And then I term limited it to 3 terms, so no longer than 12 years. And I got some pushback from fellow members about the 4-year term, so I said, okay, I'll put a term limit bill out that would allow you to serve 6 terms, but for a maximum of 12 years. Still having a hard time getting members to term limit themselves. So then I said, well, how about if we grandfather it? If you're here, you get to stay, but when you get replaced, when you retire, the new person that comes in will be term limited. And even then, it's difficult to get them to do it.
Well, it's tough because after 4 years and you still haven't quite finished what it is that you wanted to accomplish, that you're forced to leave.
That'll always be the thing, though. That's always the statement that it'll never get done. Look at the Congress as a large governing board of any major corporation. Any new ideas, any thoughts, any plans, any suggestions that a member of Congress has, they've given them all by then. And you need new blood, new energy, and more importantly, new urgency. I self-term limited at 4 terms if the people here keep me there for that long, and I will walk out after 8 years of 4 terms, and I'll do it gladly, because I believe that there'll be another American citizen who's as capable or more capable than I, for sure, to be able to step into that place and do the work with that urgency. And I think that's important.
We just went through a gubernatorial recall election. How did you see that process? Do you see it as a process that's constitutionally sound? Is it a process that was frivolous? Was it a process where people wanted a do-over and they got to do a do-over?
I saw all of them. I think within our framework, within the state constitution, it clearly was permitted, and so it was constitutional within our state framework. I think it was frivolous, and I think people got their say. And so all things happened. But the thing that bothered me the most about the whole thing was the degradation of civil discourse here in Wisconsin. We've never had this problem before, where people were screaming at each other, neighbors were on neighbors, and it was disappointing. And so what this country needs more, and what we need here in Wisconsin more than anything, is to have thoughtful, adult-like conversations about real issues that are affecting the American people so that we can together move forward with answers. You know, our founders were pretty smart in how they set up our system, whether you like it or not, or whether it seems like it doesn't work right. What they did do is they said, if you can't find consensus, don't do those things. But where you can find consensus, do that. And so they forced us into a system that required us to find consensus, and that's what they wanted us to do.
And we are back with more with Congressman Reid Ribble right after this. Stay with us. And we are back now with Congressman Reid Ribble. Congressman, we have a United States Senate race coming up in the state of Wisconsin. Have you thrown your support behind anybody at this point?
Yeah, whoever the Republican nominee is. I'll support whoever wins our primary.
So at this point, it does not matter whether it's Mark Newman, whether it's Tommy Thompson, whether it's Eric Hubdy.
No, yeah, or Jeff Fitzgerald. Don't forget Jeff Fitzgerald.
So you're not throwing your support?
No, I've told everybody that I think it's very important. I did this on the presidential primary here as well. It's important that the people select the nominee. Mm-hmm. And then once the nominee is selected, then the party gets behind it. And so we'll wait till the people speak, and then I'll support whoever the nominee is.
We've been talking so much about jobs in the state of Wisconsin, job creation. You very well know that a few months ago, mining in Wisconsin kind of came to a standstill. Gogebic Taconite threw its arms up in the air. They were frustrated because environmentalists and the mining industry and the legislature couldn't come together on an agreement, taking with it 2,300 jobs to start with. Is mining dead in Wisconsin, or do you see it as being resurrected again in some way, shape, or form?
I personally think it'll be resurrected again. There'll be another election coming up in the fall. I think mining will be one of the campaign issues for state assembly and state senators, and they'll let the citizens do what they always do best, and that is ultimately make the final decision. And they'll build a campaign on it. The citizens will speak, and then they'll go ahead, and the legislature and governor will follow. My guess is that it will move forward at somehow. The idea that mining cannot be done in an environmentally sound way is just not factually true. It can be done in a sound way, and I think that Wisconsin would benefit from those jobs. And so we'll see what the American people say and the citizens say in November.
Assuming you are behind Mitt Romney in the presidential election, what is it that Mitt Romney brings to the citizens of Wisconsin that Barack Obama does not?
He brings real-world private sector experience. I think one of the things that I hear almost every single day is that the citizens here in Northeast Wisconsin are concerned about jobs and the economy first. Those are things that really concern them because jobs still continue to lag. And what Mitt Romney brings to this table is practical, real-world experience in job creation. And that's something that we don't have with the executive in the White House right now. And it clearly shows. After 4 years, unemployment is higher than when he took office, and it's never been below, I think, 8% now for three and a half years. So employment's a problem. He's not been able to solve the problem. The Senate has been complicit with this. The House of Representatives have passed over 27 bills that would help spur job growth and economic activity here in the United States. We've been blocked in the Senate. And so I think the citizens, again, like we just talked about with mining, will make a decision in November to send a new message to a new president.
Finally, Congressman, in 2010, you knocked off an incumbent in Dr. Steve Kagan. So you very well know what can happen when a relative unknown can come out of nowhere and defeat an incumbent.
Yeah.
Your strategy, how do you prevent a person like Jamie Wall sneaking up on you, the incumbent?
I don't know that there's necessarily a strategy per se. The strategy is to make sure I'm doing the constituent services work that needs to happen when citizens call us and say they can't get their Social Security or Medicare checks, when veterans can't get their medals or whatever the case may be. Make sure that our offices are responding to those things and doing those things. And then most importantly, Tom, it's doing what I said I would do. If I do what I said I'll do, and I've actually done that, then the voters will make a decision. And I want you to know something. I'm completely comfortable with the decision the voters make. I've come to learn something very important in my first 18 months, and that is that the voters are right, and the political class in Washington, D.C. is often not. And so I trust the voters.
A perspective we don't often hear. Yeah. Congressman Reid Ribble, thank you so very much for being with us this morning.
Good to be
much
here.
appreciated. We are back with more right after this, so stay with us.